The magma-streaked skies of Gravitas glowed amber in the dying light of twin suns. Commander Thrax stood at the edge of the launch platform, his massive frame silhouetted against the horizon as he watched transport ships land and depart in a choreographed dance of interstellar commerce. As a Grox, widely acknowledged as the galaxy's strongest species, he took particular pride in the efficiency with which his kind controlled the spaceport operations. "Commander," came a voice from behind him. "The Starforge is ready for boarding." Thrax turned to face his assistant, Celia. Though also a Grox, she was smaller than him by nearly a foot, still towering over most other species at 7 feet tall. Her exoskeletal ridges were smoother, less pronounced than his battle-hardened plates. "Good," Thrax rumbled. "Our delegation cannot be late. The Galactic Council expects punctuality, especially from the Grox." "Of course, Commander." Celia consulted her datapad. "I've arranged for our quarters in the forward compartment, as tradition dictates. As is proper." Thrax nodded approvingly. The strongest species always claimed the front sections of interstellar vessels, an unwritten hierarchy that had existed since the early days of galactic exploration. It was simply the natural order of things. As they approached the massive interplanetary transport vessel, Thrax observed the other passengers, gathering at various boarding gates. Near the rear of the line stood 2 humans, a slender woman, with dark hair pulled back in a practical bun, and a broad-shouldered man whose watchful eyes constantly scanned their surroundings. "Humans," Thrax remarked with thinly veiled disdain. "Always in the back." Celia followed his gaze. "They're part of the Earth Embassy technical team, I believe. The woman is Lana Ortiz, an engineer. The man is Malik, her security detail." "Engineers," Thrax scoffed. "They tinker with machines because they lack the strength to accomplish things directly." The boarding process began with military precision. The Grox delegation was ushered forward first, as befitting their status. Other species followed in descending order of both physical prowess and political influence. The massive insectoid Zarchin, the crystalline Luminari, and so forth. The humans were among the last to board, making their way toward the rear compartments without complaint. Inside the forward section of the Starforge, Thrax settled into his specially reinforced seat, designed to accommodate his dense musculature and armored exoskeleton. The forward compartment was spacious, with reinforced viewing ports that offered spectacular vistas of space. Everything about the accommodation spoke of privilege and power. "We depart in 20 minutes, Commander," Celia informed him as she organized their diplomatic materials. "The journey to the Galactic Council headquarters should take approximately 3 standard days." Thrax merely grunted in acknowledgement, his attention caught by the 2 humans passing through on their way to the rear compartments. The engineer, Lana, was carrying what appeared to be a portable diagnostic toolkit, while her guard maintained his vigilant posture. As they passed, Lana nodded respectfully toward the Grox delegation. "Commander Thrax, I presume? I'm Lana Ortiz, lead engineer for the Earth Embassy. This is Malik." Thrax straightened his massive frame, towering over the human woman. "You know of me?" "Your reputation precedes you," Lana replied diplomatically. "Your negotiation of the Tarsian mineral rights was impressive." Despite himself, Thrax felt a flicker of satisfaction at the recognition. "The Grox do not fail when strength is required, nor do humans when ingenuity is needed," she responded with a small smile. "We look forward to a safe journey with you aboard." As the humans continued toward the rear compartments, Thrax turned to Celia. "They show proper deference, at least." "The humans often do," Celia observed. "They seem to accept their place in the hierarchy without resentment." "As they should. Their species has neither the strength nor the natural armaments to claim otherwise." Thrax settled back in his seat. It is the natural order. The boarding process completed, and the Starforge's engines rumbled to life. Through the viewport, Thrax watched as the rocky surface of Gravitas fell away beneath them, replaced by the star-speckled blackness of space. The ship accelerated smoothly, its course set for the Galactic Council headquarters in the Centauri system. For the first 18 hours of the journey, everything proceeded according to schedule. Thrax reviewed diplomatic briefs, conferred with Celia about negotiation strategies, and took his meals in the forward compartment's exclusive dining area. The humans remained largely unseen, presumably occupied with whatever trivial tasks befitted their station. It was during the ship's artificial night cycle that everything changed. Thrax was awakened by a violent lurching of the vessel, followed by the wail of emergency sirens. The overhead lights flickered, then switched to the red glow of emergency power. The ship shuddered again, more violently this time. "Commander!" Celia burst into his quarters without ceremony, her normally composed demeanor shaken. "We've encountered a plasma storm, an uncharted one. The navigation systems are failing." Before Thrax could respond, the ship's AI made an announcement. "Attention all passengers. Starforge has sustained damage to primary navigation and propulsion systems. Emergency protocols are engaged. Brace for evasive maneuvers." The floor beneath them tilted sharply as the ship's remaining functional thrusters fired in an attempt to evade the worst of the plasma storm. Through the viewport, Thrax could see writhing tendrils of luminescent energy surrounding the vessel, occasional bursts striking the shields with enough force to make the entire structure vibrate. "Status report," Thrax demanded, striding toward the command interface in his quarters. "Multiple systems failing," the AI responded. "Hull integrity at 78% and declining. Navigation severely compromised. Seeking emergency landing options." Celia's datapad chimed with an incoming notification. "Commander, the captain reports we're being pulled into the gravity well of Ithra-Fu. It's an ice planet in this system, uninhabited, but within emergency landing parameters." "Can we not outrun the gravity well?" Thrax demanded. "Negative, Commander," the AI replied. "Primary engines are offline, remaining thrusters insufficient for escape velocity." Another violent shudder ran through the ship, and this time, the lights went out completely before the emergency systems kicked in. "All passengers prepare for emergency landing procedures," the AI announced, its synthetic voice now interrupted by static. "Proceed to impact positions. This is not a drill." Thrax and Celia secured themselves in the reinforced crash couches that deployed from the walls of the forward compartment. Around them, other Groks and privileged passengers did the same. Through the intercom, Thrax could hear the sounds of panic from the midship compartments, where the less durable species were housed. The descent into Ithra-Fu atmosphere was a harrowing experience even for the normally stoic Groks. The ship's remaining stabilizers struggled against the gravitational forces, and the hull groaned under the strain of re-entry. Through brief glimpses from the viewport, Thrax could see they were descending toward an endless expanse of ice and snow, broken only by jagged mountain ranges in the distance. The impact, when it came, was both better and worse than expected. Better, because the ship remained largely intact, a testament to its construction. Worse, because the landing was far from controlled. The Starforge skidded across the frozen surface for nearly a kilometer, its hull shrieking in protest as it carved a deep furrow through the ice. Internal bulkheads collapsed, and the distinct sound of the ship breaking into sections echoed through the structure. When the vessel finally came to rest, an eerie silence descended, broken only by the occasional groan of settling metal and the hiss of ruptured conduits. Thrax extricated himself from his crash couch, immediately assessing his condition. His exoskeleton had protected him from serious injury, though he had sustained some bruising. Around him, the other Groks were similarly recovering, their naturally armored bodies having shielded them from the worst of the impact. "Celia!" he called out, spotting his assistant, struggling with a fallen support beam that had partially pinned her. With a display of the strength that had made the Groks legendary, Thrax effortlessly lifted the massive beam and tossed it aside. Report. Celia winced as she tested her limbs. Minor fractures in my left arm. Commander. But functional. The ship appears to have broken into at least 3 sections. Forward compartment, where we are, seems relatively intact. And the others? Midship appears to have sustained heavy damage. Rear compartments. She paused, consulting her damaged but still partially functional datapad. Rear compartments are completely severed from the main vessel. Life support is failing throughout. Thrax moved to the shattered viewport. Outside, a blizzard was beginning to gather strength, swirling snow, reducing visibility to mere meters. The temperature gauge on the wall, one of the few systems still functioning, showed external temperatures well below freezing. Commander, one of the other Grox officers approached. We've managed to activate the emergency beacon, but with the storm intensifying, it's unlikely any rescue vessels will risk landing until conditions improve. How long? Impossible to say with certainty. The planet's weather patterns are unstable. Could be days. Thrax absorbed this information with the impassivity expected of a Grox commander. Begin salvage operations. Secure all survival equipment. Establish a perimeter. As his orders were carried out, Thrax made his way through the damaged corridors toward what had once been the connection to the midship section. The passage was now blocked by twisted metal and exposed circuitry, occasional sparks illuminating the destruction. "Commander," called a voice from behind him. It was Lana Ortiz, the human engineer. Her face was smeared with soot, and a cut above her eye left a trail of blood down her cheek, but she seemed otherwise unharmed. Behind her stood Malik, looking considerably worse for wear with his right arm hanging limply at his side. "You survived," Thrax observed, making no effort to hide his surprise. "We did," Lana confirmed, though many in the midsection didn't. The structural failure was catastrophic there. And the rear compartments? That's where we were when it happened. The section broke free during impact. We had to climb through the wreckage to reach this far forward. Lana gestured to her companion. "Malik needs medical attention. Do you have supplies?" Thrax considered the request. By Grox standards, Malik's injury hardly warranted concern. A dislocated shoulder, perhaps, or a minor fracture. Nothing that would incapacitate a truly strong species. "Our medical supplies are for the Grox delegation," he stated flatly. "Your human physiology requires different treatment." Lana's expression hardened, almost imperceptibly. "Commander, with respect, we're all stranded here. Cooperation would benefit everyone. The Grox do not require human assistance to survive," Thrax replied dismissively. "Return to your section and tend to your own needs. We will secure this area." "Our section is rapidly losing heat," Lana countered. "The life support systems are failing. There are survivors there who won't last the night without help." Thrax turned away from her. "Not my concern. The strong survive. Engineer Ortiz, it is the way of things." He could feel her eyes boring into his back as he walked away, but he did not turn. The Grox way was clear. They would endure through strength, as they always had. The humans and other weaker species would have to fend for themselves. Back in the forward compartment, Thrax found his delegation had already established an effective command center. Emergency power had been rerouted to maintain heat and basic life support. The strongest members were reinforcing the damaged hull sections against the howling wind outside. "Commander," Celia approached, her left arm now bound in a makeshift splint. "I've completed an inventory. We have emergency rations sufficient for approximately 7 days, assuming Grox consumption rates. Water recyclers are functioning at 60% capacity. And the drive core? Completely offline. The primary control modules were sheared away during the crash." Thrax processed this information grimly. Without the drive core, they had no way to generate sufficient power for long-term survival, let alone signal for rescue beyond the basic emergency beacon. "Where are the control modules located?" he asked. Celia hesitated before answering. They would have been in the rear section, Commander, where the humans are. This was unwelcome news. Thrax had no intention of appearing dependent on the very species he had just dismissed. We will find another solution. As the artificial day cycle gave way to night, the temperature outside plummeted even further. The blizzard intensified, howling winds buffeting the damaged vessel with increasing fury. Inside the forward compartment, the Groks huddled around emergency heaters, their naturally high metabolism helping them resist the cold better than most species would. Thrax stood at the damaged viewport, watching the snow accumulate against the hull. They were becoming buried, which provided some insulation but would make eventual extraction more difficult. The emergency beacon continued to pulse into the storm, but he harbored few illusions about immediate rescue. "Commander," Celia's voice interrupted his thoughts. "There's something you should know." He turned to face her. "Speak." "I've been analyzing the ship's schematics," she said, indicating her datapad. "The rear compartment doesn't just contain drive control modules. It houses the auxiliary navigation system and the backup communications array." "Your point?" "If we could access those systems, we could potentially boost our emergency signal and provide rescue ships with precise coordinates, even through the storm." Thrax's exoskeletal plates shifted in the Grok's equivalent of a frown. "You suggest we need human assistance?" "I suggest," Celia chose her words carefully, "that survival might require utilizing all available resources." Before Thrax could respond, a commotion at the sealed entrance to their compartment drew his attention. Two of his security detail were confronting someone. It was Malik, the human security officer, looking even worse than before. His face was pale, his lips tinged with blue from cold exposure. "Commander Thrax," Malik called out, his voice strained but determined. "Lana sent me. We need to talk." Against his better judgment, Thrax approached the human. "You should not be here." "No choice," Malik replied, through chattering teeth. "Rear section's temperature is critical. Life support failing completely. We have injured who won't survive the night." "And what do you expect the Groks to do about this?" "Lana says the forward section has functional environmental controls. She proposes a trade. Sanctuary for your engineers." Thrax bristled at the implied negotiation. "The Groks do not need human engineers." Malik's expression hardened, despite his obvious pain. "She thought you'd say that. That's why she asked me to tell you we've secured the drive control modules. 3 of them intact. We know you need them." The audacity of it. Humans attempting to bargain with the mighty Groks. Thrax felt his temper rising, the ridged spines along his back stiffening in anger. "You dare threaten us? We could simply take what we need." Malik, despite his physical state, did not back down. "You could try, but Lana's rigged the modules with a failsafe. Any attempt to forcibly remove them will render them useless." "Commander," Celia interjected quietly, "we should consider their offer. The storm is worsening, and our power reserves are limited." Thrax glared at her, then back at the human. The situation was intolerable, being forced to negotiate from a position of weakness went against everything the Groks stood for. And yet, the logic was undeniable. Without those modules, their chances of survival diminished significantly. "Very well," he finally growled. "Your injured may shelter here. The engineer comes to install the modules under Grok's supervision. Nothing more." Malik nodded weakly, clearly struggling to remain upright. "I'll tell her, but we'll need help moving our people. Many can't walk." With great reluctance, Thrax dispatched 4 of his strongest warriors to assist. He watched them disappear into the connecting corridor, his pride wounded, but his pragmatic side acknowledging the necessity. Within the hour, a procession of battered and frost-bitten survivors from the rear compartment began arriving. Mostly humans, but also a few luminari and a single Zarchin, whose chitinous exoskeleton had cracked in the cold. They were a pitiful sight to Grok's eyes, weak, vulnerable, dependent on technology rather than innate strength to survive. Lana Ortiz arrived last, carrying a sealed container that presumably held the precious drive control modules. Her expression as she approached Thrax was neither submissive nor antagonistic, simply focused. "Commander," she acknowledged with a nod. "Thank you for shelter. I'll need access to your power distribution node to install these properly." "Celia will show you," Thrax replied curtly. "But understand this, human. The moment rescue arrives, you and your kind return to your proper place." Lana met his gaze steadily. "Our proper place at that moment will be wherever ensures survival, Commander. Just as it is now." As she followed Celia toward the power distribution hub, Thrax found himself unsettled by her words. There was neither fear nor resentment in her tone, merely a pragmatic assessment that echoed, uncomfortably, his own philosophy of survival. Throughout the long night, Thrax observed the humans and their methods with grudging attention. Lana worked tirelessly on integrating the salvaged modules, her slender fingers manipulating delicate components with a precision no Grox could match. Meanwhile, Malik organized the other survivors, establishing a makeshift medical area and ensuring the weakest received care first. It was, Thrax had to admit, an effective system, though entirely different from Grok's priorities, which would have focused resources on the strongest to ensure the group's overall survival. By morning, or what passed for morning on this frozen world, with only a slight brightening of the perpetual gloom, Lana had successfully integrated 2 of the 3 modules. The emergency beacon now transmitted a much stronger signal, and limited ship-to-ship communications had been restored, though there was still no response from potential rescuers. "The 3rd module is more problematic," Lana explained to Thrax during her report. "It controls the environmental systems, but it was damaged during extraction. I need components from the midsection to repair it." "The midsection is inaccessible," Thrax countered. "The structural damage is too severe." "For you, perhaps," Lana said. "But I'm smaller and can navigate the collapsed spaces. Malik could assist." "Absolutely not," Thrax interrupted. "No human leaves this compartment alone. I will not have you sabotaging our position or hoarding resources." Lana's expression remained neutral, but Thrax detected a flicker of something, disappointment, perhaps, in her eyes. "Commander, with respect, this isn't about species superiority. It's about survival skills. Your size and strength are disadvantages in tight spaces with unstable structures." Before Thrax could respond, Celia stepped forward. "I could accompany Engineer Ortiz. My frame is smaller than most Groks, and I understand the ship's systems well enough to identify valuable components." Thrax turned his glare on his assistant. "You would risk yourself crawling through wreckage with a human?" "I would risk myself to increase our chances of survival," Celia replied evenly. "As any Groks would." Put that way, Thrax could hardly object without appearing to contradict Grok's values. "Very well, but you will maintain communication at all times, and you will return within 2 hours, regardless of your success." As Lana and Celia prepared for their expedition, Thrax found himself watching the human engineer with growing curiosity. There was something about her methodology, precise, efficient, adaptive, that challenged his preconceptions. The humans lacked physical prowess, certainly, but they compensated in ways he had never fully appreciated before. The two departed through a narrow access hatch that led toward the midsection. In their absence, Thrax turned his attention to the condition of his delegation and their unexpected guests. The combined life support systems were holding, but with more bodies to sustain, resources were being consumed more rapidly than anticipated. Malik approached him, moving stiffly with his injured arm now properly splinted. "Commander, may I speak with you?" Thrax nodded curtly. "Some of our people have expertise that might be useful," Malik suggested. "Dr. Natasha from the Earth Medical Corps could help treat your injured warriors more effectively than your field medics. Grok's physiology is not like yours, Thrax dismissed. She specializes in xenophysiology, Malik persisted. Treated Groks on the frontier worlds during the Tarsian conflict. This gave Thrax pause. The Tarsian conflict had been brutal, with many Groks warriors suffering wounds that would have been fatal without advanced medical intervention. If this human doctor truly had experience with Grok's patients. Very well, he conceded. She may examine our wounded, under supervision. It was a small concession, but Thrax noticed the subtle shift in atmosphere it created. The invisible barrier between the species began to thin, if not dissolve. As Dr. Natasha moved among the injured Groks, her confident competence earned reluctant respect from even the most traditional warriors. Meanwhile, the storm outside intensified further. The ship's hull groaned under the pressure of accumulating ice and howling winds. Temperature readings from external sensors continued to drop, and Thrax began to wonder if even the mighty Groks could survive prolonged exposure to such conditions. 2 hours passed with no word from Lana and Celia. Thrax found himself growing increasingly concerned, not merely for his assistant, but for the human as well. He was about to organize a search party when the access hatch finally opened, admitting 2 frost-covered figures. Celia entered first, limping but triumphant, her functioning arm laden with salvaged components. Behind her came Lana, dragging an unconscious Groks warrior, one of the security detail who had been presumed lost in the crash. "We found him trapped in a pocket of the collapsed midsection," Celia explained, as medical personnel rushed forward. "Lana detected his body heat with her scanner. We couldn't leave him." Thrax stared at the human woman in disbelief. "You risked the mission to rescue him." "The mission was to retrieve components and save lives," Lana replied simply, her breath forming clouds in the cold air. "His life counts too." The injured warrior was one of the younger members of the delegation, ambitious but inexperienced. His exoskeleton was cracked in multiple places, and internal bleeding was evident. By Grok's survival standards, he would typically be considered too damaged to prioritize with limited resources. Yet Dr. Natasha immediately moved to his side, working in concert with the Grok's medic to stabilize him. Thrax watched in silence as human hands and Grok's hands worked side by side. 2 species with vastly different evolutionary paths combining their knowledge to preserve life. "We found everything we needed," Lana reported, setting down her collected components. "With these, I can repair the 3rd module and possibly restore partial propulsion to the forward section." "Propulsion?" Thrax questioned. "To what end?" "Mobility," Lana explained. "If rescue can't come to us because of the storm, perhaps we can move to a more accessible location once I've boosted the signal strength." The logic was sound, but Thrax found himself struggling with the implications. The humans were proving far more valuable than he had anticipated. It challenged everything he had been taught about the natural hierarchy of species. As Lana returned to her work on the modules, Thrax pulled Celia aside. "Report honestly. How did the human perform in the wreckage?" Celia hesitated, then spoke quietly. "Commander, I have never seen anyone navigate such conditions with such skill. Where I would have used strength to force a path, she found one that required no force at all. Where I saw only debris, she saw useful components. It was educational." Thrax absorbed this, his worldview shifting uncomfortably. "And the warrior? You said she detected him?" "Yes. He was unconscious, nearly frozen. I would have passed by, assuming any life signs too faint to indicate viability. Her scanner detected his fading heat signature, and she insisted we investigate." Celia's voice lowered further. "Commander, she endangered herself to free him. The structure was highly unstable." This was not the behavior Thrax had expected from a supposedly inferior species. Risking oneself for the strong? That made evolutionary sense. but risking oneself for the injured, the potentially non-viable. It defied Grok's logic. As the artificial day progressed, activity within the forward compartment took on a more coordinated pattern. Humans and Groks began to work in small, mixed teams, the humans providing technical expertise and fine manipulation, the Groks contributing strength and endurance. It was an uncomfortable arrangement at first, with centuries of ingrained hierarchy not easily set aside, but necessity proved a powerful motivator. Lana completed the repair of the third module by mid-cycle, restoring full environmental control throughout the compartment. Temperatures rose to more comfortable levels, and with the improved life support, even the most severely injured began to stabilize. The communications array is now operating at 80% capacity, she reported to Thrax. I've programmed it to broadcast on all emergency frequencies, with a specific focus on the Galactic Council channels. And rescue prospects? Thrax inquired. Lana's expression was guardedly optimistic. The storm is the primary obstacle. It's interfering with sensors and making landing nearly impossible. But with our enhanced signal, they'll know exactly where we are when it clears. Which will be when? She shrugged. Impossible to say with certainty. The atmospheric patterns are chaotic. Could be hours, could be days. Thrax recognized his own words from earlier, echoed back to him without irony. The parallel was not lost on him. As night fell again, the compartment settled into an uneasy rest cycle. The Groks and humans maintained separate sleeping areas, traditional boundaries still observed despite their increasingly collaborative efforts during waking hours. Thrax found himself unable to rest, his mind troubled by the day's events and their implications for his understanding of strength and hierarchy. He made his way to the makeshift engineering station where Lana continued to work despite the late hour. She was hunched over the partially reconstructed propulsion controls, her small hands making adjustments too delicate for Grok's fingers to manage. You should rest, he said, startling her. Lana looked up, fatigue evident in her eyes. So should you, Commander. Groks require less sleep than humans. And engineers require less sleep than commanders, she countered, with a small smile. Or at least, that's what we tell ourselves. Thrax found himself unexpectedly appreciating her humor. What are you attempting to accomplish? I'm trying to reroute power from the environmental systems to the maneuvering thrusters. If I can generate even minimal propulsion, we might be able to shift our position to a more sheltered location. She gestured toward a makeshift display showing topographical features. There's a canyon 2 kilometers south that would provide natural protection from the worst of the winds. Thrax studied the display. A sound tactical decision. Thank you, Lana said, seeming genuinely pleased by his approval. Though I'm having trouble with the power coupling. Grok's technology is designed for operators with much greater physical strength than humans possess. Without thinking, Thrax reached over and made the adjustment she was struggling with, his powerful hands easily manipulating the resistant mechanism. Like this. Exactly like that, Lana nodded. We make a good team. The words hung in the air between them, challenging long-held assumptions. Thrax found himself unable to dismiss them, as he once would have. Perhaps, he conceded, different strengths have different applications. Lana set down her tools and faced him directly. Commander, may I speak frankly? Thrax nodded. Your species values physical strength above all else, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's clearly served you well. But this crash has demonstrated that survival often requires more than one type of strength. The Groks have survived countless calamities through strength alone, Thrax countered, though with less conviction than he might have mustered days earlier. I don't doubt it, Lana acknowledged. But consider this. If the ship had been populated only by Groks, would you have been able to repair the control modules? If it had been populated only by humans, could we have moved the debris that trapped your warrior? Thrax had no immediate answer. The logic of her argument was difficult to refute. In my culture, Lana continued. We have a saying, diversity is strength. It means that different perspectives, different abilities, different approaches, they don't weaken a group. They strengthen it by providing solutions to problems that no single approach could solve. It was a radical concept to Grok's thinking, which had always equated uniformity with strength. Thrax found himself both disturbed and intrigued by the idea. Before he could respond, the ship's emergency systems blared to life. External sensors were detecting a massive energy surge in the atmosphere above them, consistent with a ship breaking through the storm. Rescue? Lana wondered aloud. Or scavengers, Thrax cautioned. Not all who traverse these regions have honorable intentions. They hurried to the command interface, where Celia was already attempting to establish communication with the approaching vessel. After several tense moments, a response came through, garbled by interference but recognizable as the Galactic Council Emergency Response Protocol. It's a rescue ship, Celia confirmed. They've detected our enhanced signal and are attempting to lock onto our exact position for extraction. Relief swept through the compartment as the news spread, but it was quickly tempered by Lana's next observation. The storm is intensifying again. If they can't land soon, they might have to abort. Thrax made a decision. Engineer Ortiz, activate your propulsion modifications. We will move to the canyon location you identified. But the system isn't fully tested, Lana protested. It could fail catastrophically. Then, we will have lost nothing, as failure to move may result in missed rescue regardless. Thrax turned to his delegation. Secure all personnel for movement. Assist the injured. The next hour was a flurry of activity as the disparate groups worked together to prepare for what would essentially be a controlled crash of the already damaged forward section. Grok's strength was essential for securing structural weak points, while human ingenuity devised makeshift shock absorbers from available materials. When all was ready, Lana took position at the jury-rigged propulsion controls. On your command, Commander. Thrax looked around at the assembled survivors, Groks, humans, and the few other species, all now dependent on each other's unique abilities. Proceed. The ignition of the maneuvering thrusters sent a shudder through the entire structure. For a heart-stopping moment, nothing happened except an ominous groaning of metal. Then, slowly, the forward section began to slide across the ice, leaving a deep furrow in its wake. The journey was rough, with the makeshift vessel bouncing and lurching across the frozen terrain. Several times, it seemed certain they would break apart completely. But the reinforcements held, and the canyon gradually grew closer on their primitive scanners. Power reserves at 15%, Lana reported tensely. We're not going to make it all the way. We don't need to, Thrax replied, studying the tactical display. Even partial protection from the winds will improve rescue chances significantly. As the power reserves dwindled to critical levels, Lana shut down the propulsion system. They had made it approximately 2/3 of the way to the canyon. Not ideal, but significantly better than their original exposed position. Now we wait, Thrax said, moving to stand beside Lana at the viewport. Outside, the storm continued to rage, but their sensors indicated the rescue vessel still orbiting above, searching for an opportunity to descend. They'll find us, Lana assured him. The signal is strong enough to penetrate even this interference. Thrax found himself believing her confidence, despite all his training to rely only on Grok's certainty. The rescue, when it finally came 3 hours later, was not the dramatic landing Thrax had anticipated. Instead, the Galactic Council vessel deployed specialized extraction pods, autonomous units that could navigate the storm using repulsor technology, unknown to either Groks or human engineers. As the survivors were loaded into the pods in groups of 4, Thrax found himself unexpectedly reluctant to re-establish the traditional hierarchies. When a council officer automatically directed the humans towards separate extraction vessels, Thrax intervened. Engineer Ortiz and Security Officer Malik will accompany my delegation, he declared, surprising even himself with the pronouncement. The council officer, a luminary unused to being contradicted by anyone, especially a Grox, blinked her crystalline eyes in confusion. But protocol dictates. I am aware of the protocol, Thrax cut her off. It is superseded by my authority as ranking survivor. Lana looked at him with undisguised surprise, as she and Malik were ushered into the same extraction pod as Thrax and Celia. As the pod lifted off, buffeted by the storm, but protected by its advanced shielding, an uncomfortable silence fell over the small space. It was Malik who finally broke it. Thank you, Commander. That was unexpected. Thrax shifted his massive frame in the confines of the pod. The circumstances of our survival were equally unexpected. Necessity makes for strange companions, Lana observed quietly. Indeed. Thrax gazed out at the swirling snow below, the wreckage of the Starforge already being reclaimed by the merciless environment. It also reveals truths that comfort can conceal. The extraction pod docked with the rescue vessel, and the survivors were escorted to medical facilities for assessment and treatment. True to long-established custom, the ship's layout placed the traditionally dominant species in the forward sections, with humans and others directed toward the rear. As they reached the junction where their paths would diverge, Thrax hesitated. There was something unfinished between them, a question that had been forming in his mind since those first desperate hours after the crash. Engineer Ortiz, he called as Lana was about to follow the human contingent toward the rear compartments. A moment, if you will. She turned back, eyebrow raised in query. There is something I wish to understand, Thrax said, aware of Celia watching him with interest. Why do humans sit in the back? Lana smiled. Not the tight, diplomatic smile she had offered during their first encounter, but something more genuine. Because when everything falls apart, Commander, the people in the back are the ones with the chance to fix it. Thrax considered this, the simplicity of the statement belying its profound implications. Throughout galactic history, the Grox and other physically dominant species had claimed the forward positions on ships, in council chambers, in every hierarchy. They had seen it as their natural right, their due as the strongest. Yet in doing so, they had also claimed the position of first impact, first exposure to danger, and last access to the systems that might save them when strength alone proved insufficient. A most interesting perspective, Thrax acknowledged. One worthy of further consideration. As they parted ways, Thrax found himself viewing the familiar corridor layout with new eyes. The segregation that had once seemed natural now appeared arbitrary, even counterproductive. Strength without ingenuity, he now understood, was as limited as ingenuity without strength. In the days that followed, as the rescue ship made its way to the nearest Galactic Council outpost, subtle but significant changes began to manifest among the Grox delegation. Several warriors requested permission to observe human engineering techniques. Celia organized joint briefing sessions, where information was freely exchanged rather than carefully controlled. And Thrax, to the astonishment of the council representatives aboard, formally invited engineer Lana Ortiz to serve as technical advisor to the Grox delegation for the remainder of their journey to council headquarters. Your perspective, he told her, when she questioned his decision, provides strength of a different kind. The Grox would be foolish to reject strength in any form. On the final day of their journey, as the council headquarters came into view through the ship's main viewport, Thrax found Lana in one of the observation lounges, gazing at the spectacular array of diplomatic vessels gathered around the massive station. It seems our adventures have attracted attention, she remarked, nodding toward a cluster of press drones hovering near the docking bays. The dramatic rescue of the mighty Grox and their human companions. Is that how they're describing it? Thrax asked, genuinely curious. Among other things, Lana confirmed. though I noticed they still use the traditional species hierarchies in their reports. Thrax's exoskeletal plates shifted in what Lana had come to recognize as the Grok's equivalent of contemplation. Traditions change slowly, Engineer Ortiz, but they do change. Call me Lana, she suggested. I think we've moved beyond formalities. Lana, Thrax acknowledged. And traditions that no longer serve their purpose should change more quickly than most. As the ship began its final approach to the docking bay, Thrax made a decision that would be discussed in council chambers for years to come. When the disembarkation protocols were announced, with the traditional species-based ordering, he simply ignored them. Instead, the Grok's delegation exited side by side with the human survivors, a visual statement that reverberated through the gathered dignitaries and media representatives. And when questions were inevitably asked, Thrax's response became the stuff of diplomatic legend. The Grok's value strength above all. Recent events have taught us that strength takes many forms, and wisdom lies in recognizing all of them. In the months that followed, subtle changes began to appear in Grok's vessel designs. Engineering stations, once relegated to rear compartments, accessible only to technical staff, were incorporated into command centers. Human engineers were invited to Gravitas to consult on integrating their methodologies with Grok's manufacturing techniques. And on the newly commissioned diplomatic vessel that replaced the lost Starforge, the traditional segregation of species by compartment was notably absent. Instead, accommodations were assigned based on function and expertise, rather than physical prowess or evolutionary heritage. When asked about this revolutionary design, Commander Thrax would simply observe that the galaxy's strongest species had finally learned the true meaning of strength, and why humans sit in the back.